Wow. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. You're going to love this one. Get out now why you should pull your child from public schools before it's too late. Mary Hansen joining us, the author of this book, the co-author of this book concerning her thoughts on the state of public education. Mary, good morning.
Good morning.
Boy,
and thank you for having me.
Well, you're quite welcome. Boy, with a title like that, let's start off with what's wrong with public schools?
Well, it is an urgent question because things have changed. Public schools are no longer what you and I might have grown up with or even what they were 10 years and 5 years ago. What's the game changer here is the transgender agenda. And what parents need to realize is that this is going to affect every child's school experience and just destabilizing their sense of who they are, whether they're a male or female, the most basic thing about them. And children are going to be taught to distrust their senses, that they've got to conform in terms of the language they use, and it's just a complete indoctrination into a different view of the human person, a false view that's really at odds with science as well.
How did we get so overly sensitive? I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you have, that episode of Seinfeld where it really was foreshadowing what's become today, where everybody was offended by just innocent comments. And that seems to have percolated into the world of education, which you seem to cover in your book, Get Out Now.
Right. If a lot of this stuff first came into the schools through anti-bullying efforts, and nobody's in favor of bullying, but we know how to treat people. We know how to teach children to be kind and not to be mean. It doesn't require that all of a sudden we have to define human beings as neither male nor female, and that we have to go along with someone's confusion about whether they're male or female just because their feelings lead them in a different direction. So everything is being spun in order to go along with the feelings of people who are either confused or sometimes overly sensitive or whatever it might be. But this really just pushes a lie onto our kids and teaches them that biology doesn't matter, that you have to conform and your speech has to mirror what the progressive ideology tells you it has to say.
Well,
and these are things that should worry parents.
Well, I thought schools focused in on, Mary, the old questions, reading, writing, and arithmetic. How is that differing today?
Well, if only that were true. Unfortunately, schools have moved into the territory that parents used to occupy in terms of teaching basic things like who you are as a person. So because of this anti-bullying stuff and the transgender ideology, children are taught that they're just sort of a fractured person, gender expression, they no longer have biological sex. It's called sex assigned at birth, as if it's something arbitrary. Their gender identity, they're just a jumble and they get to choose who they are. And at the same time, schools are also engaging in what they call social emotional learning, which really is the schools evaluating children regarding their emotional well-being and keeping records of that and engaging in all different methods that really amount to psychological manipulation. And parents are kept in the dark here. And Kevin, that is one of the things that I think is most important to emphasize, because parents want to know what's happening with their children. But the schools have taken the stance increasingly that they are the gatekeepers. Once children walk in the school door, they are the gatekeepers between the child and the parent. And so in many states now, in many school districts, there are specific regulations that say the school districts don't have to tell parents if a child is exhibiting some sort of gender confusion or says that if they're born a boy, that now they're a girl. If they're starting to act this out in school, the schools don't have to tell parents. And in fact, in some cases, they're explicitly forbidden to do so unless the child consents. So there's been a shift here that parents have become adversarial to the child's best interests. And parents can't change this. And this is one of the things that I think is hard for us to accept as Americans. We think of public schools being responsive to the community and to parents, but that just is not the case any longer, because these changes are driven by ideologues, they're driven by the unions, they're driven by the educational establishment, and then they're backed up by progressive litigators. That's why school districts really don't want to fight these battles, because they know they're going to be sued by the left, just as they were for many years over religion in the public schools. Well, now it's whether you're accommodating, and more than accommodating, whether you're welcoming anyone with a confused gender identity and whether you're using correct pronouns and all of this. So that's why it's not responsive to parents. Parents are really powerless to protect their children from this.
Mary Hansen joining us. Get Your Kids Out Now, her new book, Why You Should Pull Your Child from Public Schools Before It's Too Late. Let's delve into this a little deeper here on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. How did God get the boot from schools, and what has replaced God in the schools?
Well, good question. Part of it was a desire to not specifically promote one religion, but what has happened instead is that God has been literally kind of like vacuumed out, just sucked out. There's no reference, no acknowledgement that we have a creator, even though that's in the Declaration of Independence. And so instead, our children are taught that science is the ultimate authority, but there's no opportunity for kids to grapple with how do faith and science go together? How do we make sense of these big questions in the world? God is just irrelevant from those conversations. And that changes how our children think. And we're seeing the results of it. So in this youngest generation of high schoolers, 35% of children who are teenagers today identify as atheist, agnostic, or simply nothing. So that's 1/3 of kids coming up. It's a far higher total of kids who are abandoning religion than what we've seen in previous generations. And this is just because they go through the public schools and they're taught every day that God doesn't matter. They're taught that implicitly because God is left out of these conversations. So
it seems a direct attack on faith-based individuals.
It is. And in some cases, there's hostility as well. In other cases, it's just pretending God does not exist. And when you get used to considering the big questions, history, science, as if God does not exist, it's not a far leap to begin to live your life as if God does not exist. So, these are some of the changes that parents really cannot, they can't protect their kids from. And so when you look at the totality, this has become something that is creating a generation of kids that are not, they're not even open to conservative ideals. In fact, there was a study out of UCLA that every year surveys entering freshmen into college. In other words, before they're exposed to liberal professors. And the latest data from 2016, it was the most liberal group of students since the 1960s. And so this is the result of the public school system. It's not that all these kids are suddenly radicalized when they get to college. Yes, the colleges have a problem in terms of imposing progressive ideology, but this starts well ahead of time. And as conservatives, we need to think about that. Why are we giving our kids to a system that's just going to turn them against everything that we as parents are trying to instill in them?
On the other hand, we're funding that. We don't have a choice. So is it possible to reclaim the public schools? Of course, if you're conservative, you're automatically vilified. You're called extremist. I don't know how we can overcome this campaign against people of faith, people that have traditional American values.
Yeah, so here's what I would say. I think parents need to look at their children and realize there are no do-overs on childhood. So they need to do what's best for their kid right now, which is get your kid out of the public schools. Put them somewhere, homeschool them, put them in a faith-based environment, do a co-op, whatever it takes to form them and raise them in the principles and values that matter most to you. At the same time, we need to be pushing our policymakers, our legislators, to really make vouchers a meaningful option. Right now, there are so many strings on vouchers, and some states have Blaine amendments that prevent the use of voucher funds going to be used by a child towards religious education. Those things need to go, and that's the pressure point for our legislators. But I think we need to get their attention first and make them realize we're not putting up with this anymore. We're not going to sacrifice our kids now to the hope that somewhere 10 years, 15 years down the line, we're going to be able to recover the public school systems. And so that's why we feel this urgency to tell parents, look at your child. You don't get a do-over. You know, you can do remedial reading and remedial history, but if your child is destabilized in terms of understanding something so basic about whether they're a boy or a girl, whether they have a creator who loves them or not, those are the things that are really, really hard to redo and to get back and to correct once they're corrupted, and which is what's happening in the public schools. And the data is there. That's what we put in our book. We've made that case. And so I think the long-term answer is vouchers and to let the money follow the child, put parents back in charge to decide where they're going to choose to educate their children. But for individual parents, look at your child and realize you don't get a do-over. Do the right thing. Give them the formation and protect them in the only way that you can, by getting them out now.
Well, Mary, we appreciate it. Mary Rice Hanson, get out now, why you should pull your child from public schools before it's too late. Thank you for joining us. We'd love to have you back.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
You too. KIDO Talk Radio. All right, Cindy, good morning. Welcome back. Thanks for your patience.
Oh, no, that was wonderful. You know, your callers have been so spot on. And you know what? I would call it in the social engineering, the sort of petri dish of what's happened in our government schools. You can be in there too and fight back. And, you know, not only this depressive delusional, there's someone running in the state of Vermont. We have bought into running people with actually what was mental illness, but also sort of like in Babylon and Rome, the sexual orientation and the self-gratification they're even teaching through Agenda 21 and these health books. I mean, finally, even people that were involved in African countries, they're saying, we don't want your products. We want to stop epidemics of AIDS and other things. So, you know, it is an ideology, whether it translates over into voter fraud, where lying can be, you know, rationalized and either double voting or doing illegal things. Don't think because you say they're not religious government schools, that is a set of core norms, belief that's translating everywhere, whether it be into, you know, what has happened with this race baiting with our president. The left knows nothing better because somehow in their heart of hearts, they think that if they think they're either not, let's just say, racist or they're for all women. And the woman who called earlier was spot on with this diversity thing that, you know, my daughter got called out of his education in the state of Washington University because her grades were too good, but she was very much too white. So when you have this mix in there, that it's not with the heart of unifying together as Americans, as patriots, you know, as you still want people, as Dinesh says, living on, you know, sort of the plantation and everybody else's money, and that makes what is making you feel good instead of core biblical values, you know, even forgiveness, and that's of yourself. This is how it's just translating all over the place, Kevin Miller. But you want to know what? The most exciting thing to me last night, I just have been so blessed by the people of Idaho. And you know what? Last night, there was a rider riding around you in his victory lap on a horse. You know, nobody was carrying, you know, he happened to be black. Oh, yes, he was, with a little Jesus on his collar, and he won the rope. And there was a man sitting next to me of another color that I never saw a man take his hat off so quick to the Star Spangled Banner, and he shook my hand and he goes, my dad was a Marine, and so of course I want to bless this country. Nobody at that rodeo, and that's why I love rodeo, was thinking about anything else. It's just hoping that everybody, you know, was having a good old time in America, saluting the flag, everybody getting along. So there is good to be out there, but you're going to have to fight back. If you keep your kid in a government school, I as a nurse, left before, I probably would have gotten fired for not going along what they thought was I was supposed to be doing with, I would just say passing out products in a high school. So you may have to take a stand, but fight back. Don't give up. God's not dead. Kevin Miller, you're out there. Great callers this morning. And of course, everybody vote. I got my absentee ballot legally. I'm keeping my residence. And of course, I'm voting for Brad Little. Surprisingly not. It breaks my heart. Dinesh D'Souza corrected me. We have to stick together in the Republican Party.
Well, look, that sounds like what Kevin Miller has said for quite some time.
You're absolutely right, Kevin. You're absolutely right. So I'm sticking together, and I'm going for it, not because I want to call myself necessarily a Republican, but we're supporting all the constitutional values that this party wants to stand for: small government, giving people good jobs, and I will say I do believe Brad Little will go forward in supporting the babies and being pro-life, marriage, one man, one woman, and can we have good things in the state of Idaho and keep the marijuana out?
Keep them. Yep, right on, Cindy. Sing it, sister.
Bye, Kevin.
No, bye-bye. Okay, well, we'll see ya. No marijuana in the gem state. Cindy's building the wall. I'm building the wall. And coming up, we'll hear from you next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
We're just excited to have the opportunity to display our national motto inside our public school classrooms. It's an opportunity for our students and for our faculty to build pride and unity in our school system with our national motto,
which is "In God We Trust." We'll get back to that conversation in a minute. No, that isn't anybody from Idaho talking. You're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Kevin Miller with you, starting your day on the right side. Don't forget Glenn back after me. Traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work, Everett. Thank you, Larry. So here we have it. We have, Mary Rice Hansen that was in Get Out Now, and Cindy calling in after this, why you should pull your child from public school before it's too late. And Mary, well-researched, along with Teresa Farnan, the co-author of the book. But does anybody believe that their schools here in the Treasure Valley are equal to that? Look, we go to schools. We proudly promote education here. And some people, look, that's what the beauty of this program is. I mean, you talk about it, we talk about it. We proudly, can agree to disagree sometimes. People say, oh, Kevin, the public schools are evil. Well, public schools are our best avenue for what? For enhancing our society, to making sure that we have educated, literate folks that will one day be competent enough to have jobs, to pay taxes, to pay for us old people, right? I have a responsibility, whether it's my parents, whether it's Robin and Paula, whether it's whomever. My neighbors, I go, what are you doing? I go, I'm working. They go, you keep working, kid. I got to pay for them. I get it. I'm pretty excited about this millennial generation based on the fact that there's more of them than there are my generation, which is Generation X, one of the smallest age cohorts. So there are going to be more of them than me now. Right now, there's more people in retirement that are working almost. But regardless of that, on one hand, it's easy to vilify, and I know it's frustrating. The other day we were talking about another levy, this time in Canyon County, but more people are coming here. And when you talk to an attorney, they always say, family law, my old friend Nancy Grace, Kevin Miller, family law, I wouldn't get into that. You get yourself killed. I'd rather try a murder case than that. And you want to talk about some of the dirtiest, most contentious, nasty elections? Those are for school board. They take that stuff personal. And they should. I get it. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, I don't think you can blow up the schools. You can say, hey, this is what's going on. But and I can hear Pat from Middleton. There he goes. Liberal Kevin, liberal Kevin, liberal Kevin, liberal Kevin. But there's a lot of good things going on. Do I believe that we need God back in schools? Yes, but I also believe we need God more prominently in our own lives. And you know that old motto, what would Jesus do? We need to live by that, don't we? More on that in a minute, plus a live report from Caldwell with our own Larry Gebert. That's next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug. Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. Hey, don't forget Dave Ramsey coming up today at noon on KIDO Talk Radio. We are waiting for Larry Gebert. He's supposed to join us from Caldwell, and always love hearing from Larry at the Caldwell Night Rodeo. Obviously, that's a big deal. And really, I don't know about you. Hopefully you wake up to us. Maybe you turn on Channel 7 and you catch Larry. I love it when Larry Gebert is out on the town. And Larry's good at, talking about a lot of things. So we'll talk to Larry. Then we're going to tell you about the dirtiest job in America. And, oh, yes, it's in California. Now, for those of you that think, oh, Kevin Miller, all you do is rip it on us good California people. I don't know about that. Let's face it. If California was so great, so many people would not be moving to Idaho, right? So many people would not be moving to Idaho if California was so great. So we'll get to Larry, or we won't. But coming up, the dirtiest job in America. And it's in California, and it's in San Francisco. Joining us now from the Caldwell Night Rodeo, the Buckaroo Breakfast, our own little buckaroo, Channel 7's Larry Gebert.
That almost sounded painful as you were trying to remember where Larry was today. At the Caldwell Night Rodeo Buckaroo Breakfast. You got that part okay.
Larry, I'm a little diva. You know that. I'm just anxious to speak to you.
I know. It's great. How are you, my friend?
Always great to have you out and about.
How was your vacation? I haven't talked to you since you got back, really.
Well, Larry, you know how vacations are. You have to come back.
I know. Well, that's the way. There's two aspects to vacation. There's going on vacation and then going someplace wonderful so you can talk about vacation afterwards. And when you realize in certain cultures of the world, it's actually more important to come back and talk about your vacation. That's why it didn't matter if you had any fun. You have to go someplace exotic, spend lots of money, and then come back with photographs,
right,
so that when you get back to the office and you get to the water cooler, you've got photos that you can show, and everybody go, wow, you had quite the vacation. You were probably miserable the entire time. The kids probably acted up like crazy. Nobody was happy, and it cost way too much money. But you're at the water cooler talking about it.
Yes, Larry, my theory about vacation is you go and spend a bunch of money you don't have to further motivate you to keep working.
Yeah, that's about it, yeah. Or as they say, I've actually seen T-shirts that say, born to vacation but forced to work.
Exactly. Hey, Larry, how was the Buckaroo Breakfast today? We always love that you're out and always enjoy seeing you, whether it's in studio, water skiing, or in Caldwell. What's going on?
Actually, it's been great out here. This one actually is a true fundraiser for the Chamber of Commerce for Caldwell, and even though the economy right now is really robust and things are going well, I think this is actually one of the times that the Chamber probably has some of the biggest impact, because they're going to help those businesses grow and be able to stay sane. Because as you know, the economy is not always going to be robust and growing. I mean, there's going to be some ups and downs. And the important thing is establishing businesses that can maintain. Nobody wants to ever see a business go away.
No, I agree. And it was just a few years ago where these cul-de-sacs were empty. Now they're booming. Larry, as someone who has covered the news and been such an institution here for so long on Channel 7, what do you make of this latest economic boom?
Well, I think it's really good, and I was even talking with an expert in the housing industry, because, that's one of the biggest challenges, of course, is as you have jobs that come open and people are moving into the area, they need places to live, and there's been such a decline. There was such a need. But a lot of places have been built, and so they were kind of predicting, and I'm not sure, but it was interesting to listen to. They were predicting that they could see another little bubble right here in the local area, mostly in housing, that might go. But it doesn't. I don't think it's going to be a devastating thing. but I think we're going to see a kind of a correction, if you will, in the cost of living. And it's going to come back down a little bit because right now rentals and things like that are definitely up quite a bit because there's been such a lag. So I think that all the rest of it, though, I mean, with the way things are going, what I notice is that if I'm out at different events or charitable events and things like that, is people have discretionary money and they're willing to spend it. And that just really helps drive the economy even more. You know, I mean, even when they talked about economic stimulus at times when the economy is down, you know, one of the first things that the political folks want to do is cut taxes or give you a rebate. So if they give you money back in the form of a check, then that's supposed to be discretionary money that you'll go out and spend. And it helps to stimulate the economy and make things move. That's happening naturally, I think, with the way the jobs are going. And sometimes people even got a couple of jobs, multiple jobs that maybe they're going to. And, you know, they might be doing really well and they're making enough money in one job that when they've got a secondary job that covers all their expenses, they're just putting that money away and it's discretionary money down the road.
It's always that side hustle. So, Larry, I missed you last week with these triple digits. How bad is it going to be for the next few weeks?
Well, you know, we're still in that time of August when we can still have hot temperatures. You know, today's supposed to be 98, but in Emmett, it's probably going to make 100 degrees today. There's certain locations in the valley. Mountain Home will be really close as well at 99. You know, and there's other places in the valley that's not as bad, but you'll still see this. I don't think we're done. We are really high in terms of triple-digit days. We've had 14. You realize the average is around 5 or 6 triple-digit days a year in the summertime. We've had 14 this year. Now, that puts us number 4 on the list for number of triple-digit days. I think the biggest one was like 2003 when I think we had 22 days of triple-digit days. So that's a lot. It's not likely that we're going to break that record, but you know, if we're getting up around 14 triple-digit days, it's significant. It really is definitely hot times.
Well, speaking of hot, Larry Gebert's with us from KTVB, Channel 7. Now, Larry, before we let you go, I got to ask you, anybody in particular that you've talked to in Caldwell that always memorable, number one, and number two, do you have a favorite Montana story? Because every time we have you on, you always talk about your days in Montana, Larry.
Well, I know. I was just, I don't know. I just came back from Montana. I was up visiting my mom when I was gone for a few days. So it's always kind of interesting to get a perspective and go back home and get a chance to see a few things. And so, you know, it's just things that you remember and things that you see. And if you haven't been there for a while, I notice how everything always seems to look smaller to you than what you remembered. But I have to remind myself that when I lived there, I was a smaller person, so maybe that's why everything's a different perspective. But here, I was talking with Sheriff Kieran Donahue, because, you know, tonight's Man Up Night for the Caldwell Night Rodeo. You know, it's that, you know, and you've talked to him before, and you know what I'm talking about. It has to do with the cycle of domestic violence and trying to end that cycle of domestic violence. And that's really what the campaign has been about. It started right here with the Caldwell Night Rodeo, and so it still is very strong here. And that's why I'm wearing a purple shirt today, and they want everybody to wear their purple tonight at the rodeo. It's kind of a sign of solidarity. And even talking with him, you know, some of the numbers are staggering. It's like 1 in 4 women are the victims of domestic abuse and 1 in 7 men. So that means that if you're standing around in a crowd like this, you could just look at 4 women and say one of them was a victim. I mean, it's just staggering to think about that. And so anyway, so it's always interesting. I always enjoy talking with Sheriff Donahue about that because I always, you know, learn something new when I talk to folks like that who are really involved in trying to make a difference. And even little things like, you know, you and I, you hear this all the time. People say, wow, seems like we have so many problems, so much, you know, abuse and domestic violence and everything out there in the world. And I don't think we have any more. I think we're just doing a better job of talking about it, reporting it, and being aware of it.
Larry, anything else you want to pump up, promote? Where's Larry going to be next? That sort of thing?
Well, I'll be back here at the Caldwell Night Rodeo Buckaroo Breakfast tomorrow because it is the Power of Pink night. And so, you know, a couple of things that we get involved with at Channel 7 to help promote is both the Man Up Night and also the Power of Pink night. So it's always a big thing for us. And we you know, so I'll be back out here tomorrow to talk about that as well. But no, I mean, in terms of everything else, things are good, really.
Well, good. Always appreciate you, Larry. And
Well, I guess there is one thing. You know what? You give me opportunity. I do have one thing we can talk about.
Sure.
The Blue Ribbon Prostate Cancer Motorcycle Ride is coming up. And, of course, that raises funds for two organizations. It raises funds for the Cancer Institute at St. Alphonsus and also for the Idaho to Fly, which are the guys that will take men, predominantly men, who are suffering with any type of cancer out on a fly fishing trip for a week and let men that are recovering from cancer and ones that have just been diagnosed with cancer just kind of get a chance to talk, you know what I mean? Because, as you know, men don't like to talk about health issues. And if they just are standing on the side of a stream somewhere fishing, they're more likely to have a casual and candid conversation. So that's an important organization. Anyway, that's coming up in September. And I think that it is on it's on a Saturday about a month from now, like September 15th or something like that, whatever that Saturday is. Anyway, it starts at Idaho Urologic Institute, and it takes a little loop up around through Emmett, and then ends at High Desert Harley-Davidson, where we do a little live auction and raise some extra money.
Well, we need to get you on Idaho Insights to promote that between now and the event.
That'd be awesome. Would love to.
Well, Larry, we love you. You have a great day. We'll be watching it tomorrow in Caldwell, and thank you, sir, for all you do.
All right, thank you. Good talking to you.
All right, Larry Gebert joining us. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
I just got to say, though, absolutely true. But the problem is, of course, is that she's giving him a taste of his own medicine, a dose of what he's done. But beyond that, it still doesn't legitimate or justify the kind of vicious animus he's expressed toward people of color, and in particular, dog, mongrel. Look at all the KKK language that was used. He's evoking an entire history of assault against black people with dehumanizing languages. So he might say that about other people as well. But when he applies it to Omarosa, and then he applies it to LeBron James, and he applies it to Don Lemon, he's doing something very specific, and we need white brothers and sisters and non-black people who are allies to call him on this. Don't just have the complicity of silence or, oh my God, and wring our hands. This is an assault, the likes of which we haven't seen from the presidency in so many decades. And that's one of the faux pas of many African American people. Oh, well, he treated me nicely. Oh, he did this nicely. Yeah, the guy who put a plunger up the behind of Abner Louima was dating a black woman. So having affection for black people has nothing to do with the decrying of the hatred that someone might express about black people in general. So just because you get crumbs from Massa's table doesn't mean you ain't on no plantation.
And you heard that from Dr. Michael Eric Dyson on CNN talking about Omarosa and everything else. Now, Mr. Dyson has been an expert on race from a perspective for many, many years. And what Mr. Dyson doesn't tell you is, just like a lot of people, he can dish it out, but he can't take it. Mr. Dyson, he and his fellow colleagues debated a younger, slightly thinner Kevin Miller many years ago on CNN. And I think my parents were watching this. And I remember when Mr. Dyson said, I don't hate you. Or I'm sorry, Dr. Dyson, I hate your parents for having you. Now, that's not very nice. President Trump calling Omarosa a dog isn't very nice. President Trump plays the game by his own rules, the Trump rules. To me, it's below the dignity of the office, but Donald Trump doesn't need anybody like me giving him unsolicited advice. He's doing okay on his own. And Omarosa is far from a sympathetic figure. But the point being that all these people with their faux outrage, and what does it say in the good book? He without sin cast the first stone. What our mamas tell us, you live in the glass house, don't throw stones. Dr. Dyson, maybe you'd like to rethink some of the things you've said to me. You, astute doctor at Georgetown University, a black male saying it to me, a white guy here in Idaho, saying, I hate your parents for having you. And it was a discussion about who can and who can't say the N-word. And many years ago, the networks would call me in to defend the indefensible. And I didn't have a problem doing that because I think there needs to be a legitimate discussion about race, not the faux offensive stuff. When people tried to throw Dr. Savage off the air, they called me to defend him. Did so proudly. And that's really what it needs. That's what really this show is about. But please don't sit there and talk about how this goes back to, quote unquote, well, you said the masses and this and that, when you yourself have launched things. To me personally, I can remember many years ago flying into Baltimore, Maryland, going on a show where the leader at the time, Kawisi Mfume, the leader of the NAACP, had his own talk show. And you had a room full of 150 African Americans, black people, and me. And if you've listened to the show, you know the story where they actually put more white makeup on, and I was whiter than I usually am, which is quite an accomplishment. I mean, I'm this side of, flour. And we debated the N-word. And at the end, it was funny. My mom's going, oh, they're going to kill you. I go, no, these are important things. And in the end, the folks in the audience came up and hugged me. That's real life, legitimate interaction. Hearing as much as talking. Not what Dr. Dyson and the defenders of Omarosa say. By the way, Omarosa did respond to her being called a dog.
I think that it just shows you that if he would say that publicly, what else would he say about me privately? He has absolutely no respect for women, for African Americans.
On the other side, Sarah Sanders said,
I think the president is certainly voicing his frustration with the fact that this person has shown a complete lack of integrity, particularly by the actions following her time here at the White House.
You got to love Sarah Sanders, a true American. Let's go to Scott in Caldwell on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, sir. Hey, I wondered if you happened to see on Drudge, it was posted that there were at least 200 news agencies that were unified to take down Trump. It's a unified effort of no less than 200 agencies. And if you ask me, this Omarosa thing is a nothing burger. And I'm just going to speak for myself. I'm really glad we've got somebody in the White House that's willing to fight.
You know, like a lot of people, the libs, the media, the progressives, a lot of cowards they are. They can dish it out, but they can't take it. So much easier, Scott, to dish it out, but not to be able to take it.
This president doesn't have to take it. And I think that if somebody messes with your family, you fight for him. And I think that Trump, with all of his money and his comforts, felt like his country was being messed with. And so he decided to take up the mantle and fight. I can't say that, Bush was a globalist. His dad was a globalist. I'm going to reserve my thoughts for Obama because I think that ultimately he just did more damage than anything else. But I'm proud to have a fighter in the White House.
Scott, great call. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. But getting back to the cowards in the media, like Dr. Dyson, and you know people in your life. I know people in this business. You talk about people that are overly sensitive, that are wimps, people in the media. Oh, did you hear what they said about me? Good, good for you. But they can dish it out. They can't take it. That's what we're seeing in the media. Traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller. Hello, Dave.